Tēnā koutou, te whānau o Auckland Unitarians. Tēnā koutou nā man here, no mai, haere mai. Haere mai ki tēnei whare karakia a te atua. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. We welcome you into this space made sacred by Auckland Unitarians for 118 years. We know you come here for different reasons. To find community, to seek your spiritual and personal truth, to question, to nurture your heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and perhaps to find the answers to some of your bigger questions. We welcome you. We know you come from different places, different religions, different beliefs, and different backgrounds. We hope you will find comfort, connection, challenge, and love here. We hope you'll find ways to provide outreach to others in our congregation, in our local community, and in our world community. We hope you will find encouragement to become your best self. If you are a visitor this morning, we especially honor your courage to cross our threshold. We know it is a risky business, stepping into the unknown. After the service, we hope you will join us for morning tea. It's our sacrament of hospitality. It won't be complete without you. My opening words are by Theodore Parker, who was noted as a great heretic in the American church. And in 1841, he gave a sermon that kind of rocked Christianity. It was called The Transient and the Permanent in Christianity. In actual Christianity, that is, in that portion of Christianity which is preached and believed, there seem to have been, ever since the time of its earthly founder, two elements, one transient, the other permanent. The one is the thought, the folly, the uncertain wisdom, the theological notions, the impiety of man. The other, the eternal truth of God. Those two bear perhaps the same relation to each other that the phenomena of nature, such as sunshine and clouds, growth, decay, and reproduction, bear to the great law of nature, which underlies and supports them all. As in that case, more attention is commonly paid to the particular phenomena than to the general law. So in this case, more is generally given to the transient in Christianity than to the permanent therein. It must be confessed, though with sorrow, that transient things form a great part of what is commonly taught as religion. An undue place has often been assigned to forms and doctrines, while too little stress has been laid on the divine life of the soul, love to God and love to man. Religious forms may be useful and beautiful. They are also whenever they speak to the soul and answer a want thereof. In our present state, some forms are perhaps necessary, but they are only the accident of Christianity, not its substance. They are the robe, not the angel, who may take another robe, quite as becoming and useful. He goes on in this sermon to basically say that the idea of Jesus as the Son of God is transient. That Jesus, the permanence of Jesus, is his love for humanity. So this was quite a heretical statement in his time. I like the chalice in the words of Ursula Goodenough. I have come to understand something to delight in achieving. When the man stopped for the amber light, as he legally should, instead of gutting through the intersection, trying to beat the red light, the woman behind him laid on her horn, opened her window, screaming abuse at him while giving him the universal finger of outrage for preventing her from running the light. While waiting for the light to change, there was a knock at her window. It was a constable inviting her out of her car. He put her under arrest. At the station, she was fingerprinted and put in a holding cell. A few hours later, the constable released her with apologies, explaining that with all the bumper stickers on the car that said things like, "Honk if you love Jesus," and "What would Jesus do?" and the little chrome fish stuck under the back window, I could only assume the car was stolen. This story came to mind when I read a recent interview with the president of Union Theological Seminary, America's oldest seminary that boasts former faculty such as Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Paul Tillich, and Reinhold Niebuhr. I attended America's second oldest seminary and was taught by a faculty who had largely studied at Union under such progressive Christian luminaries. What struck me about the interview with Dr. Serene Jones, its first woman president, was her acknowledgement that she did not believe the Bible was the Word of God, or in a physical bodily resurrection, or a virgin birth, or the recorded miracles of Jesus, or an interventionist God that answered your prayers but not those of your neighbor, or a heavenly afterlife, or that Jesus was the Son of God. New Zealand's Lloyd Geary, author of Christianity Without God, would label her a non-theist. What struck me was the interviewers asking if she still identified as Christian, considering she rejected all the historic tenets of Christianity. This reminded me of all the times I've been asked if I was a Christian, often while I was wearing my clergy dog collar. As Dr. Jones and I are reading from the same theological page, I had to ask myself the question. Considering Christianity's support of Trump's behavior, even going so far as to put up billboards suggesting he is the second coming of Christ, as well as their blatant misogyny, homophobia, Islamophobia, racism, and opposition to immigration, I have to ask if I even want to identify as Christian, progressive or otherwise. The answer, not particularly. The Jesus I know wouldn't either. In fact, he never came close, being Jewish. He certainly didn't identify as the Messiah. After a lifetime of self-identified as a Christian, letting go of it still isn't easy. Identity is such a critical part of who we are. More correctly, I should say identities, as we are a collection of them gathered over time. We start out as a child in a particular whānau. We may have siblings. Later, we may be parents. If fortunate, we might become grandparents. To confuse it more, we might lose some of them over time if a parent, sibling, or spouse dies, or if we are divorced. Who are we then? We gain or lose identity by what we do, where we live, how old we are, our economic or social status or class, and our political leanings. Some identities are more permanent, such as our gender or the color of our skin. But even these have a transitory nature as they come to be viewed differently by society. For instance, gender has become viewed in a much more fluid way than when I was a child, when there were just boys and girls, so far as we knew. For example, I'm apparently now a cisgender, an identity I didn't even know existed a year ago. It means I identify with the gender I was assigned at birth. That identity doesn't have much impact on how I see myself, but it impacts others greatly. It gives those who do not identify with the gender assigned them at birth alternatives they didn't have before. It allows them an opportunity to validate who they are when they had no place to fit before. In other words, my claiming the identity of cisgender gives those who do not share it an identity they can now claim. This is a case where my identity empowers others. But there are many more instances where my identity oppresses or discriminates against others. For some, the experience of being a particular sex or sexual orientation, from a particular racial or ethnic group or social economic class, involves recurring and even systematic or institutional prejudice. This prejudice can manifest in unequal opportunities, rights, or wages, as well as being stereotyped, marginalized, or persecuted. Recognizing that my identities have privileged me to the disadvantage and at the expense of others who do not share my identities is also part of my identity. Since I did not choose those identities, it's not a source of shame unless I choose to continue blindly to benefit from them. Adding oppressor to my multiple identities hardly benefits my spiritual well-being. It's certainly not one I want to claim. However, not claiming it doesn't magically make it untrue unless I acknowledge and disavow the power being an oppressor has given me. In other words, I need my identities, but not all of them, if I am to be my best self. Understanding that identity is highly fluid over time Understanding that identity is highly fluid over time gives us multiple opportunities to explore the question, who am I? It is highly likely the answer will keep changing. This is not only true for individuals, but for nations, institutions, and religions. What the answer is can bind us together or tear us apart. So the answer to who I am cannot be fully answered unless I ask, who am I with? My repeated questioning over time has led me to be with Unitarian Universalists, a faith movement made for these times. Ron Engel, Unitarian professor of social ethics at Meadville Lombard School of Theology for 30 years, called Unitarian Universalism the democratic faith. Now, by that, he didn't mean the faith of the Democratic Party. He meant that we are a faith of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unitarianism and Universalism arose in a world that was oppressive. It was a world in which humanity was seen as debased, degraded, incapable of choosing good without the threat of punishment. In spite of, or in resistance to that, there were visionary folk who believed in the human capacity to choose good and to have empathy. William Ellery Channing wrote in his sermon, Likeness to God, "The likeness of God belongs to our higher or spiritual nature. In ourselves are the elements of the divinity. It is the resemblance of a parent to a child, the likeness of a kindred nature. Divinity is stirring within the human breast and demanding a culture and liberty worthy of the child of God." Instead of seeing humanity as lowly, inert clay, Unitarians advanced a belief in a creature who required guidance, education, freedom, and respect to reveal the better angels of our nature. The Universalists rejected the idea of a vengeful, punitive deity and instead testified that in the presence of guidance, education, freedom, and love, humanity would choose the good. 18th century Universalist and signer of the Declaration of Independence, Benjamin Rush, wrote, "A belief in God's universal love to all his creatures, that he will finally restore all of them that are miserable to happiness, is a polar truth. It establishes the equality of humanity." These are remarkable and deeply religious assertions. This is not a faith about God or not God, an afterlife, kind of afterlife, or no afterlife. Not one teacher or another teacher. Not about any one book over all the others. All those things help us to understand faith in individual ways, but each is only a finger pointing to the moon and not the moon itself. They're the clothes upon the body of spiritual understanding. This is a movement I can identify with. My spiritual journey has led me here. Our UU principles are not imposed on my identity. I'm simply invited to live them out with you. And in so doing, they've become my identity. They connect our individual identities into one. In that connection, you and I become a faith movement the world desperately needs. For my meditation, I share this from the Buddha. Since you are searching for understanding of self, don't ask about caste or class, riches or birth, but instead ask about heart and conduct. Look at the flames from a fire. Where does the brightness arise? From the nature of wood. And it doesn't matter what kind of wood. In the same way, the bright heart of wisdom can shine from wood of every sort. It is through virtuous conduct, through loving kindness and compassion, and through understanding of truth that one becomes noble. for our closing words. And now, since the struggle deepens, since evil abides and good does not yet prosper, let us gather what strength we have, what confidence and valor that our small victories may end in triumph, and the world awaited be a world attained.